The Wales family settled into their seats with the quiet dignity that had become their hallmark, their arrival completing the gathering of royals, dignitaries, and representatives from across the Commonwealth and beyond. The ancient pews of Westminster Abbey now held witnesses to history, each person present understanding that they were participating in a ceremony that connected them to over 1,000 years of British royal tradition. William sat with his characteristic composure, but those who knew him well could detect the emotion beneath his formal exterior. Watching his father prepare to receive the crown that his grandmother had worn with such distinction for 7 decades brought together feelings of pride, loss, and anticipation for the future. The weight of his own destiny seemed more tangible in this sacred space where he would one day undergo the same solemn ritual. Kate positioned herself with careful attention to both protocol and her children's needs, her maternal instincts never completely overshadowed by royal duty. Her navy ensemble had photographed beautifully against the Abbey's ancient stones, and the fashion choices that had taken months to finalize were already being analyzed and praised by commentators around the world. Yet her focus remained firmly on supporting her husband and managing her children during the lengthy ceremony ahead. Prince George sat between his parents, his young face serious as he absorbed the magnitude of the occasion. The boy who would one day wear the crown himself seemed to understand instinctively that this was more than pageantry or family gathering. This was the formal transfer of responsibility that defined the constitutional monarchy. His great-grandmother's patient explanations about duty and service were becoming real before his eyes. The 9-year-old prince had been carefully prepared for this moment, but the reality exceeded even the most detailed briefings. The combination of ancient ritual, magnificent music, and the presence of representatives from every corner of the Commonwealth created an atmosphere unlike anything he had previously experienced. His composure throughout would be noted by observers as evidence of his developing understanding of his future role. Princess Charlotte maintained her natural grace while taking in every detail of the ceremony unfolding around them. Her position in the line of succession meant that she too would one day play a significant role in supporting the monarchy, and her evident comfort with public occasions suggested she would embrace these responsibilities with the same warmth that had made her great-grandmother so beloved. The young princess seemed particularly fascinated by the ceremonial aspects of the coronation, her eyes following the movements of the clergy and the presentation of the ancient regalia that would be used to crown her grandfather. Her ability to remain engaged and appropriately dignified throughout the lengthy service would demonstrate the careful preparation she had received for life in the royal spotlight. Prince Louis, despite his tender age of 5, appeared to grasp the importance of the occasion even if he couldn't fully understand its implications. His parents had worked carefully to prepare him for the long ceremony, explaining the need for quiet behavior and attention to the proceedings. His natural exuberance was tempered by the solemn atmosphere of the Abbey and the gentle guidance of his older siblings. The youngest Wales child provided moments of natural warmth throughout the ceremony, his genuine reactions to the pageantry around him creating some of the most endearing images of the day. His ability to maintain appropriate behavior while still displaying his authentic personality would endear him to viewers around the world and demonstrate the success of his parents' approach to raising their children in the public eye. As the ceremony progressed through its ancient stages, the family witnessed the formal crowning of King Charles III, each ritual connecting them to the unbroken chain of succession that stretched back through centuries of British history. The moment when the crown was placed upon his head marked not just his personal transformation from heir to sovereign, but the beginning of a new chapter in which William's own preparation for kingship would intensify. The music that filled the Abbey seemed to lift the entire congregation, the combined voices of the choir, and the majestic notes of the organ creating an atmosphere of celebration tempered by reverence. These same hymns and anthems had been sung at royal coronations for generations, their familiar melodies carrying the weight of tradition, while speaking to the continuing relevance of the monarchy in contemporary Britain. The global television audience, estimated in the billions, watched every moment with fascination, many seeing their first coronation ceremony and marveling at the survival of such ancient traditions in the modern world. The Wales family's participation provided a bridge between the historical significance of the ceremony and its contemporary relevance, their obvious unity and genuine affection for each other, humanizing the grand spectacle. As the ceremony reached its climax and the newly crowned King Charles III received the formal recognition of his subjects and representatives from around the world, William and his family understood that they were witnessing the moment when the future officially became the present. The crown had passed to a new generation, beginning the reign during which William would complete his own preparation for the throne. The significance of their presence at this historic ceremony extended far beyond their roles as family members, supporting a newly crowned king. They represented the future of the monarchy itself, the continuation of traditions that had survived world wars, social upheavals, and countless changes in the world beyond the Abbey's ancient walls. As the final blessing was pronounced and the congregation prepared for the recessional that would mark the ceremony's conclusion, the Wales family knew they had participated in a moment that would be remembered and studied for centuries to come. Their elegant arrival, dignified participation, and obvious family bonds had contributed to a coronation that successfully balanced ancient tradition with contemporary relevance, ensuring the monarchy's continued connection to the people it served. The morning that had begun with careful preparations in the privacy of their home had culminated in this sacred moment, marking not just the coronation of a king, but the formal beginning of a new era in British royal history. The great doors of Westminster Abbey stood open like portals to another world, revealing the magnificent interior that had been transformed for this most sacred of royal ceremonies. As the Wales family approached the threshold, the contrast between the excited energy of the crowds outside and the reverent atmosphere within became immediately apparent. The ancient building seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of the momentous events about to unfold. William paused for just a moment at the entrance, allowing his eyes to adjust to the softer lighting inside and taking in the extraordinary sight before them. The abbey had been decorated with magnificent arrangements of flowers from across the Commonwealth, their colors representing the diverse nations that would witness their new king being crowned. The scent of lilies and roses mixed with the ancient smell of stone and centuries of devotion, creating an atmosphere that was both timeless and uniquely significant to this day. The nave stretched before them like a path through history, lined with hundreds of distinguished guests who had traveled from every corner of the globe to witness this ceremony. Heads of state, members of parliament, representatives of charitable organizations and dignitaries from across the Commonwealth filled the pews, their formal attire creating a sea of elegant colors and ceremonial decorations. Kate felt the weight of tradition settling around her like a mantle as they crossed the threshold. Every step forward took them deeper into a ritual that stretched back over 1,000 years, connecting them to generations of royal families who had walked this same path for their own coronations and those of their predecessors. The stones beneath their feet had been polished by countless royal processions, each adding their own chapter to the continuing story of the British monarchy. Prince George walked with increased solemnity as they entered the sacred space, his young mind apparently grasping the significance of their surroundings. The abbey's soaring Gothic arches rose above them, like prayers made manifest in stone, while the stained glass windows filtered the morning light into jeweled patterns that danced across the gathered congregation. The boy who would one day be king seemed to understand instinctively that this was a place where earthly power met divine blessing. Charlotte moved with quiet grace beside her brother, her eyes wide with wonder at the magnificence surrounding them. The princess had visited the abbey before, but never for such a momentous occasion, and the transformation of the familiar space into a coronation venue clearly impressed her. Her natural composure served her well as she became aware of the countless eyes following their progress down the aisle. Louis maintained his characteristic enthusiasm despite the formal setting, though his parents could see him making a genuine effort to match the dignity of the occasion. At 5 years old, the full significance of the ceremony was beyond his complete understanding, but he seemed to sense the importance of good behavior from the respectful silence of the congregation and the careful attention of his family. The organ's majestic notes filled the vast space above them, the music seeming to lift their spirits and carry them forward on waves of sound that had accompanied royal ceremonies for centuries. The choir's voices joined in harmonies that spoke of continuity and tradition, their pure tones rising to the ancient rafters and creating an atmosphere of reverence that touched even the youngest members of the congregation. As they progressed down the aisle, William and Kate exchanged brief nods with familiar faces among the guests. Fellow members of the royal family, longtime friends, and representatives of the many charitable organizations they supported had all found their places. In the carefully planned seating arrangement, each face represented a different aspect of their lives and duties, from the most formal state occasions to the intimate family gatherings that provided balance to their public roles. The children walked between their parents, creating a picture of family unity that would be broadcast around the world and remembered long after the ceremony concluded. Their obvious affection for each other and their parents' gentle guidance provided a humanizing element to the grand pageantry surrounding them. Millions of viewers would see in them not just future monarchs, but a loving family participating in a moment of extraordinary historical significance. Television cameras positioned throughout the Abbey captured their progress from multiple angles, their images being transmitted instantly to broadcast centers around the globe. The technical achievement required to bring this ceremony to billions of viewers was remarkable, but the camera's presence was managed with such discretion that they barely intruded on the sacred atmosphere of the occasion. The congregation rose. As they passed, the rustle of formal clothing and whispered conversations creating a gentle backdrop to their procession. Diplomatic protocols had been carefully observed in the seating arrangements, ensuring that representatives of nations great and small felt appropriately honored by their placement in the Abbey. The guest list itself told the story of Britain's relationships with countries across the globe, from longtime allies to emerging partnerships. As they approached their designated seats, the family could see King Charles III in his elaborate coronation robes, the weight of ceremony and expectation visible in his bearing. This was his moment, a formal transition from heir to sovereign, the culmination of decades of preparation and service. For William, watching his father prepare to receive the crown carried particular significance as it represented both the continuation of tradition and a glimpse of his own future. The queen consort sat nearby, her own elegant attire speaking to the careful balance between honoring tradition and reflecting contemporary style. The royal jewels she wore had been worn by queens before her, their sparkle connecting her to the long line of women who had supported their husbands in the demanding role of monarch. The Abbey fell into expectant silence as the final preparations for the ceremony were completed. Outside, the crowds continued their enthusiastic celebration, but inside the ancient walls a different energy prevailed. This was sacred space where earthly power would receive divine blessing, where ancient rituals would unfold with the same precision and meaning they had carried for centuries. William and his family took their places among the congregation, their arrival marking one more step in the carefully choreographed ceremony that would formally crown Britain's new king and confirm the succession that would eventually pass to the young prince walking between his parents. The moment of emergence had arrived. The royal protection officer opened the heavy door of the Bentley, and suddenly the muffled sounds of the crowd became a roar of excitement that seemed to vibrate through the air itself. William stepped out, first his tall frame immediately recognizable to the thousands of spectators who had been waiting for this exact moment. The morning light caught the gold braiding on his uniform and cameras flashed like lightning strikes across the assembled media positions. The crowd's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Cheers erupted from every direction, accompanied by the waving of flags and the clicking of countless camera shutters. The sound was unlike anything the children had experienced before, a wall of human voices expressing joy, loyalty, and celebration that seemed to bounce off the ancient stones of Westminster Abbey and echo through the surrounding streets. Kate emerged next, her navy ensemble creating an elegant silhouette against the backdrop of Gothic architecture. The months of careful planning showed in every detail, from the precise angle of her fascinator to the way her coat dress moved gracefully as she stepped onto the red carpet that had been laid out for the royal arrivals. Her smile was radiant but controlled, acknowledging the crowd's enthusiasm while maintaining the dignity befitting such a solemn occasion. The camera lenses of the global media focused intently on every gesture, every expression, knowing that these images would be studied and analyzed for years to come. Fashion experts would dissect her clothing choices, body language specialists would interpret her movements, and historians would place this moment within the broader context of royal, ceremonial tradition. Yet Kate moved with the natural grace that had made her such a beloved figure, seemingly unaffected by the intense scrutiny. Prince George stepped onto the red carpet with careful dignity, his young face serious as he took in the magnitude of the crowd and the occasion. At 9 years old, he was beginning to understand his unique position in British society, but the sheer scale of public interest still had the power to surprise him. His great-grandmother had prepared him for moments like these during their private conversations, explaining that the attention was directed not at him personally, but at what he represented for the future of the monarchy. The young prince's composure was remarkable for someone his age, suggesting that the careful preparation and gentle guidance he had received were taking root. He walked with measured steps, his posture straight and his expression appropriately solemn for such a significant occasion. The crowd seemed to sense his nervousness and responded with encouraging cheers that helped boost his confidence. Princess Charlotte followed with the natural poise that had become her trademark. Her cream-colored dress caught the morning breeze slightly, and she managed it with the unconscious elegance of someone born to royal life. At 8 years old, she already displayed an intuitive understanding of how to connect with crowds while maintaining appropriate dignity. Her smile was genuine and warm, creating an instant connection with the spectators who had been waiting hours for this glimpse of the royal family. The princess carried herself with a confidence that belied her years, suggesting that she would grow into her royal role with the same grace that had made her great-grandmother so universally admired. Her ability to appear both regal and relatable was already evident, a quality that would serve her well throughout her life in the public. Prince Louis emerged last, and his appearance triggered a fresh wave of excitement from the crowd. At 5 years old, he was still young enough to be genuinely excited by the spectacle around him, his eyes wide with wonder as he took in the sea of faces, flags, and cameras. His natural exuberance provided a welcome note of spontaneity amid the carefully choreographed formality of the occasion. The youngest Wales child seemed almost to bounce as he walked, his excitement barely contained by the formal setting. His parents had prepared him as best they could for the long ceremony ahead, but they knew that managing his energy would require patience and perhaps some creative intervention from his older siblings. His genuine joy in the moment, however, often provided the most memorable and endearing images from royal occasions. As the family gathered together on the red carpet, they presented a picture of unity and purpose that had been carefully cultivated over years of public appearances. William's protective stance near his wife and children, Kate's maternal attention to small details of the children's appearance, and the children's obvious affection for each other, created a tableau that spoke to both their public roles and their private bonds. The walk toward Westminster Abbey's entrance began, each step taking them closer to their place in history. The ancient building seemed to welcome them, its stones having witnessed centuries of similar processions by monarchs, princes, and princesses who had played their parts in the continuing story of the British crown. Today, William and his family were adding their own chapter to that epic narrative. The crowds pressed against the barriers, phones and cameras held high to capture every moment of this historic arrival. Many had traveled from across the Commonwealth and beyond, drawn by the unique spectacle of a coronation and the chance to witness history being made. Their enthusiasm was infectious, creating an atmosphere of celebration that transcended national boundaries and cultural differences. Security personnel moved discreetly alongside the royal party, their presence barely noticeable to the casual observer but providing multiple layers of protection for the future king and his family. Every possible threat had been assessed and prepared for, allowing the family to focus on their ceremonial role without distraction. As they approached the Abbey's entrance, the sound of the organ could be heard from within, its majestic notes adding to the sense of occasion and tradition. Inside, Hundreds of distinguished guests were already seated, waiting for the ceremony that would formally crown King Charles III and mark the beginning of a new chapter in British royal history. The ancient stones of Westminster Abbey loomed larger with each passing moment as the royal convoy navigated through streets that had been transformed into a carefully orchestrated theater of pageantry. The Gothic architecture, weathered by centuries of London weather and witnessed to countless moments of British history, stood majestically against the morning sky. Its twin towers had overseen the coronations of 39 monarchs, and today, they would preside over the 40th. As their vehicle slowed to join the precise choreography of arrivals, Kate noticed the sea of faces pressed against the barriers lining the approach to the Abbey. Thousands upon thousands of people had gathered, some having camped overnight to secure prime positions. Their flags created a kaleidoscope of color, Union Jacks mingling with the banners of Commonwealth nations, while handmade signs proclaimed messages of loyalty and celebration. The sound of military bands drifted through the bulletproof windows, their stirring marches adding to the atmosphere of grandeur and tradition. The household cavalry had taken position along the route, their ceremonial uniforms and perfectly groomed horses creating a spectacular display that seemed lifted from another era. These same traditions had been maintained through world wars, economic upheavals, and social changes, their continuity providing a sense of stability in an ever-changing world. William adjusted his uniform one final time, the medals and decorations, catching the light filtering through the vehicle's tinted windows. Each ribbon told a story of service and duty, but today they also served as symbols of the continuity between generations of royals who had worn similar honors. His father's coronation represented not just a personal milestone, but the formal transition of the crown that had been delayed by his grandmother's remarkable 70-year reign. Prince George had grown quieter as they approached the Abbey, the magnitude of the occasion beginning to register in his young mind. At 9 years old, he was old enough to understand that this was not merely a family gathering, but a historic moment that would be remembered long after he had grown up. The weight of his future responsibilities was still years away from fully settling on his shoulders, but today offered a glimpse of the path that lay ahead. Charlotte maintained her composed demeanor, but her eyes sparkled with excitement as she observed the elaborate preparations surrounding them. The young princess had inherited her mother's natural poise and her great-grandmother's intuitive understanding of public occasions. She seemed to absorb the atmosphere of ceremony and tradition, filing away details that would serve her well in her own royal journey. Louis bounced gently in his seat, his 5-year-old energy barely contained by the formal setting. His parents had prepared him as best they could for the long ceremony ahead, but they knew that managing his enthusiasm would require patience and perhaps some creative intervention. His genuine joy and natural exuberance, however, often provided welcome moments of humanity during the most formal royal occasions. The convoy came to a complete stop as they joined the queue of distinguished arrivals. Through the windows they could see other members of the royal family emerging from their own vehicles, each dressed with the careful attention to protocol that such occasions demanded. The timing had been planned with military precision, ensuring that each arrival contributed to the building sense of anticipation without disrupting the overall flow of the ceremony. Kate took a deep breath, feeling the familiar combination of nerves and excitement that accompanied major royal events. Over the years, she had learned to manage these feelings, channeling them into the focused energy needed to perform her public role flawlessly. Today was different, though, more significant than any event she had previously attended. This was her father-in-law's coronation, marking the official beginning of the reign during which she would eventually become queen. The security presence around Westminster Abbey was unprecedented, with armed officers positioned at every conceivable vantage point. Snipers on rooftops, plainclothes detectives mingling with the crowds, and specialized units ready to respond to any threat created multiple layers of protection around the ancient building. The Metropolitan Police had coordinated with intelligence services from across the Commonwealth to ensure that nothing would disrupt this historic day. Television crews from around the world had established their positions hours earlier, their cameras already capturing the arrivals of dignitaries, heads of state, and members of the extended royal family. The global audience was estimated to reach into the billions, making this one of the most watched events in television history. The pressure of performing under such scrutiny was immense, but William and Kate had learned to focus on the significance of the moment rather than the mechanics of media coverage. As their turn approached, the family could hear the crowd's excitement building. The distinctive sound of cheering and applause indicated that another member of the royal family had emerged from their vehicle and begun the walk toward the Abbey's entrance. Each arrival was met with renewed enthusiasm from the spectators, who had waited patiently for these glimpses of royalty on such a momentous occasion. The final moments before their emergence passed in relative quiet, each family member lost in their own thoughts about what lay ahead. The coronation service itself would last for several hours, requiring sustained concentration and perfect behavior from everyone involved. For the children especially, this represented a significant test of their ability to maintain royal composure under the most intense public scrutiny imaginable. Kate reached over to smooth a strand of Charlotte's hair that had been displaced during the journey, her maternal instincts taking precedence over royal protocol for just a moment. These small gestures of care and affection had become her trademark, humanizing the monarchy while never diminishing its dignity. Today, more than ever, the world would be watching for these moments of genuine family connection amid the ancient ritual of coronation. The heavy oak door of Adelaide Cottage opened to reveal a world transformed by the magnitude of the day ahead. The usually quiet residential street had been secured by armed police officers positioned at strategic intervals, their presence a stark reminder that this was no ordinary Saturday morning. The official Bentley State limousine waited at the curb, its polished burgundy exterior gleaming in the soft morning light. William emerged first, his military uniform crisp and commanding, under the weight of ceremonial decorations. The morning air carried the distant sounds of London awakening to Coronation Day. The rumble of vehicles carrying dignitaries, the buzz of television crews setting up their equipment, and somewhere in the distance, the excited chatter of crowds gathering along the processional route. Kate followed closely behind, her navy ensemble creating a striking silhouette against the backdrop of their family home. The months of preparation showed in every carefully chosen detail, from the subtle shine of her pearl earrings to the precise angle of her fascinator. Her composure was remarkable, but those who knew her well could detect the slight quickening of her breath that betrayed her awareness of the cameras already trained on their every movement. The children emerged as a trio of perfectly dressed young royals, each carrying themselves with the mixture of excitement and nervousness that comes with being thrust into the global spotlight. George walked with measured steps, already displaying the careful awareness of public scrutiny that had been gently instilled in him from an early age. Charlotte practically glided beside him, her natural grace evident in the way she held her small handbag and kept her posture straight. Louis bounded ahead with the uninhibited energy of a 5-year-old, his enthusiasm infectious despite the formal setting. His parents exchanged a knowing glance. Managing Louis's exuberance during the lengthy ceremony ahead would require all their parenting skills and perhaps some intervention from his older siblings. The royal protection officers moved with practiced efficiency, their eyes constantly scanning for any potential threats while maintaining the respectful distance that allowed the family some semblance of normalcy. These men and women had trained extensively for this day, understanding that they were not just protecting individuals, but safeguarding the future of the monarchy itself. As they approached the waiting vehicle, the weight of history seemed to settle around them like a cloak. This same route had been traveled by countless generations of royals before them, each carrying forward the traditions and responsibilities that defined the British crown. Today, William and his family were adding their own chapter to that continuing story. The Bentley's interior was spacious enough to accommodate the family comfortably, but the journey to Westminster Abbey would be brief. Just enough time for final preparations and perhaps a few quiet words of encouragement between parents and children. The leather seats held the faint scent of polish and tradition, while the bulletproof glass windows provided security without completely isolating them from the world outside. Kate settled into her seat with practiced grace, immediately checking that Charlotte's dress was properly arranged and that Louis's tie remained straight. Her mothering instincts never took a holiday, even during the most significant royal occasions. She caught William's eye and offered him a small, reassuring smile that spoke volumes about their partnership and mutual support. The convoy began to move, slowly pulling away from the familiar surroundings of Adelaide Cottage and heading toward the ancient heart of London. As they traveled, the streets became increasingly lined with spectators who had risen before dawn to secure the best vantage points. Union Jack flags fluttered from windows and lampposts, while visitors from around the world held up smartphones and cameras, hoping to capture a glimpse of the future royal family. George pressed his face to the window, watching the crowds with a mixture of fascination and bewilderment. At 9 years old, he was beginning to understand the unique nature of his position, but the sheer scale of public interest still amazed him. His grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, had tried to prepare him for moments like these, explaining that the attention came with both privilege and responsibility. Charlotte waved tentatively at some children who had been lifted onto their parents' shoulders for a better view. Her natural warmth and genuine pleasure in connecting with people was already evident, suggesting that she would grow into her royal role with the same grace that had made her great-grandmother so beloved. The journey provided a moment of relative quiet before the intensity of the coronation ceremony itself. William used the time to mentally review his role in the proceedings, while Kate made final adjustments to the children's appearance and offered gentle reminders about proper behavior during the service. As Westminster Abbey came into view, its Gothic spires reaching toward the cloudy London sky, the magnitude of what was about to unfold became impossible to ignore. This ancient building had witnessed the coronations of monarchs for nearly 1,000 years, and today it would see King Charles III officially receive the crown that his mother had worn with such dignity for 7 decades. The crowds grew thicker as they approached the Abbey, with barriers holding back thousands of well-wishers who had traveled from across the Commonwealth and beyond. The air thrummed with anticipation and excitement, while overhead, the distinctive sound of helicopters suggested that news crews were capturing every moment from multiple angles. Inside the Bentley, the Wales family prepared for their emergence into the global spotlight, knowing that their arrival would signal the beginning of one of the most watched events in recent history. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestones of Westminster, as London awakened to a day that would be etched in history forever. Inside Adelaide Cottage, the Wales family home, the atmosphere buzzed with quiet anticipation and carefully controlled excitement. Kate Middleton stood before her bedroom mirror, her reflection showing a woman who had transformed from a university student into the future Queen of England. The navy blue ensemble hanging on the ornate wardrobe door had been chosen months earlier, after countless discussions with royal stylists and protocol experts. Every detail mattered on this day. The sapphire and diamond earrings that once belonged to Princess Diana caught the morning light, their brilliance a touching tribute to William's mother, who would never see this momentous occasion. Kate's hands trembled slightly as she fastened the delicate chain around her neck, a simple cross pendant that had been her grandmother's. Down the hallway, Prince William was already dressed in his formal military uniform, the gold braiding and ceremonial decorations telling the story of his service to the crown. His fingers worked methodically on the polished buttons, muscle memory from years of royal duties taking over. Yet beneath the practiced composure, his heart raced with the weight of what this day represented. His father, King Charles III, would be crowned today, officially beginning a new chapter in the 1,000-year history of the British monarchy. The children's voices echoed from Prince George's room, where 9-year-old George was trying to help his younger siblings prepare for their grand entrance into the public eye. Princess Charlotte, 8 years old with her mother's graceful poise, was already showing signs of the natural elegance that seemed to run in the royal bloodline. 5-year-old Prince Louis bounced on his toes with barely contained energy, his miniature formal wear making him look like a tiny gentleman ready for the most important day of his young life. Maria Teresa Turian Barallo, the family's trusted Spanish nanny, moved efficiently between the children's rooms, ensuring every detail was perfect. She had been with the family since George was just 8 months old, and her calm presence provided stability during the whirlwind of royal life. Today, Her expertise was more crucial than ever as millions of people worldwide would be watching. Every gesture, every expression from the whale's children. The kitchen staff had prepared a light breakfast, understanding that nerves often affected appetite on such significant occasions. William found himself unable to eat much, instead focusing on reviewing the day's schedule one final time with his private secretary. The timing had to be precise down to the minute. Their arrival at Westminster Abbey needed to coordinate perfectly with the other senior royals, creating the carefully choreographed procession that would mark the beginning of the coronation ceremony. Kate emerged from her dressing room, and William's breath caught in his throat. After more than 12 years of marriage, she still had the power to stop him in his tracks. The elegant navy coat dress hugged her figure perfectly, while the matching fascinator with its delicate netting added an air of sophisticated mystery. The Alexander McQueen design was both modern and timeless, respecting royal protocol while showcasing Kate's impeccable personal style. The children gathered in the main hallway, their excitement palpable despite the early hour. George stood tall in his miniature morning coat, his posture already showing the bearing of a future king. Charlotte's floral headband complemented her cream-colored dress beautifully, while Louis fidgeted with his tie, his infectious grin lighting up the entire corridor. Outside, the security detail was already in position. The route to Westminster Abbey had been planned and replanned dozens of times, with every possible contingency considered. The Metropolitan Police had coordinated with the royal protection officers to ensure the family's safety while allowing the public glimpses of this historic moment. As they prepared to leave Adelaide Cottage, William gathered his family together for a quiet moment. This was more than just another royal engagement or public appearance. Today would mark his father's official coronation as king, cementing William's position as heir to the throne and placing his children directly in line for the crown. The weight of centuries of tradition and expectation rested on their shoulders. Kate smoothed George's hair one final time, her motherly instincts taking precedence over royal protocol for just a moment. She whispered something in Charlotte's ear that made the young princess giggle, the sound providing a welcome note of normalcy amid the grandeur of the occasion. Louis reached for his father's hand, his small fingers intertwining with William's, larger ones in a gesture of trust and affection. The final preparations were complete. Personal protection officers spoke quietly into their earpieces, confirming that all systems were ready. The official cars waited outside, their engines purring softly in the morning air. Inside the house, the Wales family took their last private moments together before stepping into history. William looked at his wife and children, feeling a surge of pride and protectiveness. They had all been born for this moment, yet none of them had chosen it. The burden and privilege of royal duty had been thrust upon them by birth and marriage, but they would face it together as a family. Today they would not just be attending a coronation. They would be participating in the continuation of a legacy that stretched back over a millennium. The moment had arrived to leave the sanctuary of their home and enter the spotlight that would follow them for the rest of their lives.